Betrayal is one of the most popular storylines in cinema. It's a plot device that can easily draw the audience in and keep them on the edge of their seat. It doesn't matter if it's done by friends, family, or even strangers. When someone we trust double-crosses us, it gets our blood boiling. While there are plenty of examples of betrayal in Hollywood, here are 5 Mafia betrayals that ended in blood. Before we start, let's get right into it with 5. The death of a legend. On November 11, 1929, a hail of bullets ripped through the lobby of the New York City building, striking 3 men who were standing there at the time. One of the men was known to many as Noodles. He was one of the original members of the Lucchese crime family. The other 2 men killed in this attack were supposed to be meeting with another mobster named Joe Masseria. However, they were both members of the rival Genovese crime family. Noodles had become an important figure in the Mafia during his time in the organization. In fact, he was considered one of the most respected men in the Mafia Commission. This commission was basically like a board of directors where the heads of each family would meet to discuss business matters and solve any internal disputes. However, there was one issue within the commission. There was no police force that could stop these powerful crime bosses from doing whatever they wanted. This resulted in constant disagreements between the families about territory and profits, which eventually led to violence. When the violence escalated, it became clear to the police and the FBI that something needed to be done before innocent people got hurt. They created a plan that involved arresting 64 gangsters in the hopes of dismantling the criminal organization. This plan came to fruition in what was called the Valentine's Day Massacre, but it also set off a chain reaction of events that led to the death of yet another Mafia legend, Charles Luciano. To make things worse, some historians argue that Luciano himself was the mastermind behind the killings. He allegedly ordered the hit on the Genovese crime family bosses in retaliation for their refusal to cooperate with him and split profits from illegal gambling in Havana, Cuba. According to author Nicholas Pileggi, Luciano was enraged when Masseria, along with Frank Castellano and Vito Genovese, went against him and formed their own group. Luciano was already facing charges of running a prostitution ring and was desperate to secure his position in the Mafia Commission. By eliminating his rivals, he could take over their lucrative rackets and consolidate his power. Ultimately, the bloodshed paid off as Luciano was able to cement his position in the Mafia Commission and eliminate any threat he saw from the rival crime families. But this wasn't the last time betrayal would cost the Mafia dearly. In the early 1960s, a young hitman named Michael Franzese made a name for himself in the Colombo crime family. It wasn't long before he rose through the ranks and became a capo. Capo Franzese oversaw the narcotics, extortion, and gambling operations of the crime family. At this point, he was earning anywhere between $3 million and $5 million per week from his various criminal activities. Eventually, he was brought into the inner circle of the family's consigliere, but his rise to power wouldn't last forever. After being indicted for racketeering in 1985, Franzese began cooperating with the government and gave up his former associates, including his own father, who was also a member of the Mafia. When the family found out that Franzese had betrayed them, they took swift action to eliminate him and his family. His brother was murdered shortly after he testified against the crime family, and hitmen were sent to kill Franzese's wife and children. Fortunately, they were able to escape. In retaliation, the government put Franzese into witness protection and relocated him to a secret location. After spending years in prison, Franzese was released and now spends his days traveling around the country, warning young people about the dangers of joining the Mafia. 3. We have murder most foul. If you're familiar with the show The Sopranos, then you might recognize the character of Junior Soprano. Well, in real life, there was a man who shared the same name and had a similar fate. Born in 1911, Junior was a prominent member of the Genovese crime family and was involved in several illegal activities, including gambling, extortion, and murder. Throughout his career, he was implicated in more than 30 murders. So it's safe to say he was a pretty ruthless guy. But despite his violent nature, Junior was able to stay under the radar for most of his life. That is, until the FBI caught wind of a plot to assassinate a federal judge. The target of this hit was Judge Robert P. Patterson, Jr., who had been sentenced several mobsters to lengthy prison terms. When the FBI uncovered the plot, they arrested several mobsters, including Junior. This arrest was a major blow to the Genovese crime family and caused a rift to form between Junior and his former associates. According to author Selwyn Robb, Junior felt betrayed by the family when they didn't come to his aid during his arrest, and it seems like this betrayal really upset him. Shortly after his release from prison, Junior suffered a stroke that left him partially paralyzed. Despite his health issues, he continued to lead a double life, attending mob meetings and continuing his criminal activities. However, in 1985, he suffered another stroke that left him completely paralyzed and unable to speak. With Junior out of the picture, the family was left without a leader and descended into chaos. This led to a series of betrayals, murders, and power struggles that resulted in the deaths of several mobsters. And to make matters worse, Junior's nephew, Christopher, became an informant and helped the government bring down several members of the crime family. Before we move on, make sure to leave a thumbs up if you're enjoying the video. For no. 2. We have family first. There's nothing more dangerous than crossing the wrong person, especially if they're part of the Mafia. Just ask Anthony Stunner. After being released from prison in 1973, Stunner went back to his old ways and robbed a Brinks armored truck. He was able to get away with $1 million, which adjusted for inflation is equivalent to over $6 million today. The police suspected that mobsters were involved in the heist, but they didn't have enough evidence to make any arrests. As a result, the case went cold and the money was never recovered. But the crime didn't stay buried forever. In the late 1980s, Anthony's younger brother, Joseph, decided to write a story about the robbery for Reader's Digest. However, before he could publish the article, he was approached by a group of men who threatened him and told him to forget about writing the story. Of course, he didn't listen and published the article anyway. This decision ultimately cost him his life. On June 16, 1992, Joseph was shot and killed in front of his home. While the police were able to arrest several mobsters for the murder, it was clear that they were only the middlemen. Someone else had ordered the hit and was pulling the strings from the shadows. It wasn't until years later that the mastermind behind the hit was revealed. According to author Nicholas Pileggi, it was Anthony himself who ordered the hit on his brother. He did this to protect his own secret and ensure that the money he stole remained his alone. And finally, for no one, we have a father's love. Angelo LaMarca may not have been a well-known figure in the Mafia, but he played a vital role in the events that unfolded in the early 1960s. During that time, he was a member of the Lucchese crime family and a close associate of its boss, Thomas E. Lucci. However, his loyalty to the crime family would eventually be tested when he became romantically involved with the sister of a rival mobster. Of course, this wasn't exactly a good look for the Mafia, and it put Angelo in a difficult position. On one hand, he had committed a serious crime by fraternizing with the enemy. On the other hand, he was in love and didn't want to give up the woman he cared about. Ultimately, he decided to follow his heart and married the woman he loved despite the consequences. But as you might have guessed, this decision did not go over well with his boss, Thomas. He ordered a hit on Angelo and several other mobsters who had also disobeyed the law. This hit would come to be known as the Mafia's version of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. When the dust settled, 4 mobsters were dead, including Angelo and his brother-in-law, who was also a member of the Bonanno crime family. Even though Angelo's wife wasn't a member of the Mafia, she was still targeted by the ruthless mobsters. She was beaten and thrown into a vat of acid, which burned her face beyond recognition. Unfortunately, the authorities were unable to solve the crime, and it remains unsolved to this day. If you want to learn more about the Mafia, check out another video.